Hello, I'm Dave and this is Fiver, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're going to be going for a walk on the Isle of Wight at Yarmouth. We're basically going to take the ferry over from Lymington, and when we get to Yarmouth we'll have a quick look around the town, and then we'll be taking a sort of 6-mile circular route, initially southwards along a disused railway line along the banks of the River Yar to the causeway at Freshwater, and there we'll cross over the river and then head west, and then our route will then take us north past the Golden Hill Fort before joining the coastal path that takes us past a couple of other forts to the Fort Victoria Country Park. And then our final section will take us back to Yarmouth via Norton. And I expect there'll be lots of interesting things to see along the way. Well, I'm filming at the end of May. It looks as though it's going to be quite a pleasant day. We've had 3 or 4 days of quite brutal weather, one of the hottest Mays on record, but should be perfect conditions today. Well, the first thing we've got to do obviously is to get to the Isle of Wight itself. So at the moment I'm at Lymington, right on the edge of the New Forest, just waiting for the ferry. Fiver's all ready for that. He's never been on a ferry before, but he's got his pirate bandana on today, so hopefully they'll let us on board. Anyway, we should have a lot of fun today. Do join us. Well, we're now on board the ferry. Fiver wasn't too sure about the stairs, but now he's on the sun deck. He's much more relaxed, and it looks as though it's going to be a beautiful day today. So the ferry, the journey takes about 40 minutes or so, runs fairly regularly. It cost me £14 for a single foot passenger, so that's £28 return. Dogs go free. Well, as we make our way out of Lymington, show you a few things. It just shows you how big the area is in terms of marinas and yachts. It really is quite amazing. Of course, this is the head of the Lymington River. So many of those New Forest streams that we've done walks on, the Highland Water, the Ober Water, Fletcher's Water, they all sort of merge into one, the Lymington River, just near Brockenhurst. And then of course it flows out to sea here, where you get some great views crossing the Solent here. So looking over to the west, I can just about make out Hurst Spit, and at the end of that you've got Hurst Castle with the lighthouse. Of course Logan and I have done a walk there in the past. And then right on the edge of the Isle of Wight I can just about make out the Needles. Oh, what do you think of it so far? Eh? Your first trip on a ferry? He says, oh, I'm not sure, Dad. Well, we're just about to arrive at Yarmouth. Had a fairly smooth crossing. Remember that television programme, The Generation Game, with Larry Grayson, and he had a sidekick, Isla St Clair. I always wondered if Isla St Clair married the singer Barry White, then got divorced and then married the singer Brian Ferry, Would she be known as Isle of Wight Ferry? Probably not. Well, before we head out into the countryside, let's have a little wander around Yarmouth itself. Well, the first thing we'll have a look at, very close to the ferry terminal, is Yarmouth Pier. Opened in 1876. Apparently it's the longest timber pier in England that's open to the public at 186 metres long. Well, there's Yarmouth Castle, just near the ferry terminal, built in 1547 by Henry VIII to defend the Solent, and it's now looked after by English Heritage. I think it costs something between £9 or £11 to visit. Well, Yarmouth has certainly got a fascinating history attached to it. I believe it's the second smallest town in England, either by population or land area. I'm not 100% sure, but it's the oldest town on the Isle of Wight. I think it may have got its first town charter back in 1135. And it's located on the northwest side of the Isle of Wight, on the mouth of the River Yar, the Western River Yar. It's one of the earliest settlements on the island, and in AD 991 it was recorded as Ermud, which basically means muddy estuary, and the Normans laid out streets in a grid system, much of which can still be seen today. But it was a place that was raided and virtually destroyed by the French in 1377 and again in 1544. Now, Arthur Mee, in his King's England, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight book that he wrote in the 1930s, had a few things to say about Yarmouth. Got to have my glasses for this. Yarmouth. If we set out from the pleasant ferry of Lymington, this is the first place to welcome us to the Garden Isle. It is like a piece of tapestry as we approach, and on arriving is a veritable picture with its little harbour full of sail. There is no more delightful scene in the island than Yarmouth Harbour on a sunny day when the ferry arrives and the yachts of many colours, red, green, yellow and white, are lying here. It is among the oldest towns in the island and was once the seat of the governor. Well, there are a few pubs in Yarmouth. This is the King's Head, which has origins back to the 16th century, named after King Charles, although I think it has been known as the Queen's Head in the past. And this is the George, built in the early 18th century. Originally it was a mansion for the governor of the Isle of Wight, I believe, but it became a hotel in 1764 and was formerly called the Pier Hotel. Another pub, the Bugle Coaching Inn, which has got origins to the 16th century. And there's the Wheat Sheaf, a former coaching inn. I think the front bit is from the 20th century, but the back bit goes, or origins to the 18th century. A lovely town hall there, and that dates to 1763. And this is the Church of St James. Now, little remains of the medieval church that was originally here. I think that may have been destroyed by the French, but it was rebuilt between 1614 and 1626, and there was a big restoration between 1832 and 1833. And it consists of a nave, a chancel, a north and south aisle and a west tower. We'll have our usual little peep inside. And there's the font straight ahead with a lovely stained glass window just above it. Heading through the nave, there's a terrific stone pulpit on the left there, and then through to the chancel. Gorgeous stained glass window above the altar, and I love the tiny little window above as well. And then looking back at the other end of the nave, there's a terrific organ high above there. It looks like there's a sort of wooden gallery with some quite splendid paintings along the top there. What a beautiful church. Well, this is Yarmouth Mill. Originally there was a wooden tide mill here in 1664, but the present building dates to 1793, and I believe it was working up until as recently as the 19th century. Now this here is the old station. There was a railway station opened in 1888 for freight and then passengers the following year, and it's on the Freshwater, Yarmouth and Newport railway line. But the line was never that successful, and it closed in 1953, a decade before the beaching cuts. And the station remained empty until 1960, when an old wooden barracks hut was bought and added to the east side of the station building. And for the next 50 years it was used as a meeting hall, and it eventually became the Yarmouth Youth Club. But it was sold by the council in 2010. The wooden hut was demolished and the original station refurbished, with a signal box added to give views over the marshes. The Off the Rails restaurant opened in 2014, and I'm pleased to say it's dog friendly. Well folks, seeing as they do breakfast here, I've ordered a fish finger sandwich and a cup of tea, and Fiver's down beside me having a little rest. What a lovely little place it is too, and their menus are done in a sort of like a newspaper, which is quite extraordinary. Isn't that terrific? Got quite a selection. So there we go, that's what I've gone for, fish finger sandwich and a cup of tea, and they provide little doggy treats, so it keeps his lordship happy. Well, I'm somewhat fortified by that fish finger sandwich, I tell you. Okay, well, I'm pleased to say the sun has now decided to come out. So the next part of our journey, we're going to head sort of southwards, sort of parallel with the river, but following the route of the old disused railway line. Well, there are some lovely views alongside the river here, and this is the Western River Yar, not to be confused with the other River Yar on the eastern side of the island. It rises near the beach at Freshwater Bay to the south, and then, well, most of the river is actually a tidal estuary. Interesting, looking at a 1903 map, it shows that at one stage they were thinking about possibly having a branch line that was planned to go north to Lymington on the mainland, and it would go in a tunnel under the Solent, but it never went ahead. I'll tell you, when the sun does come out, it's quite glorious, but I'm glad it's not raining, that's the important thing. But this is a great part of the route, for ever so often I have to keep stopping just to take in some of the views. Well, I'm making good progress along this track. I'm pleased to say I'm not too stiff today. I'm still recovering from having completed the Jurassic Coast Ultra hike, 58 kilometres from Corfe Castle all the way through to Weymouth. I did it a couple of weeks ago and it was a challenge. I made a video about my adventure. If you haven't seen that, do check it out. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm even going to go back next year and do the second half, which is from Weymouth to Bridport. That's only 42 kilometres and not quite so hilly, although it does have a 4.5 kilometre section along Chesil Beach, and that's like walking through quicksand. Well, still a little bit of evidence of the old railway line as we make our way along the old route. Plenty of the concrete fence posts that remain. Well, a little pit stop just to show you some of the views inland, as it were, looking over to the south. It really is quite a pretty area all around the island. Well, this is as far south as we're going to go on the walk. We're now going to cross over the river Yar, over that causeway, basically starting to head westwards. But what a beautiful setting, seeing the swans on the left there. Oh wow, look at this. So just on the western side of the causeway, an old pillbox, which must be from the Second World War. Ideal position, sort of guarding both the causeway and the river. And this is the Red Lion at Freshwater, the sister pub of the Wheatsheaf in Yarmouth, according to its website, which also states that the pub originally dates to the 11th century, but the current red brick building is certainly a lot newer than that. Oh, what a beautiful church. The All Saints Church at Freshwater. Now, originally there was a Saxon building which had an aisleless nave. Between 1190 and 1200, a 3-bay arcade was added to the nave, and later chapels added to the north and south of the original chancel. There were extensions in the 13th century, and then it was heavily restored between 1875 and 1876, and indeed it looks largely like a 19th century building from the outside. I mean, I think the porch is Victorian. Aha, that's the footpath sign I was looking for, F66, heading towards Monk's Lane. A little update on the route. This is the path that we've been coming along, and you need to look out, as if you're going to be doing this walk after watching the video, for a path that heads north. There's no actual sort of footpath sign, but I'm fairly certain that that's where we need to go, and that's going to take us to the Golden Hill Fort. At least I hope it does. Whew, a little pit stop to get my breath back. Been going uphill, but what a view. So this is looking over to the southeast, I suppose. I can just about see the river through those trees there. It is quite hazy today, I know, but beautiful views nonetheless. Well, we've made it to the top of the hill, and look at this impressive building here. This is the Golden Hill Fort. Basically, some defensive barracks were built here between 1863 and 1872. Although interesting, it doesn't actually show on an 1897 map. And it's a sort of hexagonal building, and it had accommodation for 8 officers and 128 men, and it had its own hospital. And well, it's on high ground, so obviously it would have been good for defending the River Yar. There were 6 guns that were removed in 1903, and it was sold by the Army in 1964, and it's now all privately owned. I think in 2005 it was converted into something like 18 apartments, so there's no actual public access inside. So we're actually in the Golden Hill Country Park. Lots of viewpoints and walks. This is a gorgeous view, and I can see the sea through the gap there. All right. Yep, lovely day to be out.
Beautiful, isn't it?
So your horse looks absolutely gorgeous.
She's lovely, isn't she? Thank you.
Well, a little update on the route. We've made our way off Golden Hill Country Park, and we're continuing to head northwards, and we're going to follow Monk's Lane, and that should take us onto the coast path. Oh, I had to stop for this view, just coming along Monk's Lane. We might get a better view later on, but looking across the Solent there, Hurst Castle, you could almost touch it, couldn't you, on the other side? It looks so near. Well, we're still on the coastal path, just past sort of little private estate. I think it's called Cliff Edge or something like that. Now, at the bottom of the cliff is Fort Albert. We're not going to be able to see that because it's all private. But I'll tell you about it anyway, and I'll put some photos up because we got some great views of it when Logan and I did a walk at Hurst Castle on the other side of the Solent. But it was built in 1854 to defend the western side of the Solent. It's also known as Cliff End Fort, but it was closed for military use in 1957, and as I say, it's now private. I think there's apartments. Interesting, it doesn't show on an 1897 map. I guess it was named after Prince Albert, the husband of Queen Victoria, not sure. Oh, there's an even better view of Hurst Spit and Hurst Castle through that gap. Of course, the gap between the castle and here is only about 1.2 kilometres. It was built by Henry VIII between 1541 and 1544, and in 1648 it was briefly used to hold King Charles I before his trial and execution in London. Of course, it's had alterations over the years, and it was still being used in the Second World War. But English Heritage took over ownership of it in 1983, and day-to-day management is the responsibility of an organisation called the Friends of Hurst Castle. But as I said, Logan and I did a great walk there a few years ago, so do check that video out. Yeah, it's just getting a bit warm now, so got plenty of water for myself and his lordship. Enjoying that, aren't you? Good boy. Hello. This chap looks a bit Billy No Mates, doesn't he? He says, what you got in your hand? Anything to eat? E5's not too sure. He's a bit wary, aren't you? Ooh. That's the signpost we were looking for. Fort Victoria. And this is the aforementioned Fort Victoria, built between 1852 and 1855. Henry VIII first built a fort here, but that was demolished by the 17th century. And this brick triangular fort was built on the site. And it was in use until 1962, and then parts of it were demolished. But I think it is actually still open to the public. See, there's a cafe here. Well, it's a great place to explore, that's for sure. And look at this very impressive piece of artillery. Oh, look at this. Sort of a bit of driftwood, I expect, that's been carved into the shape of a fish. Brilliant. That's an interesting wooden pier stuck out there, built in 1856, believe it or not. And I was reading that in the Second World War it had torpedo tubes mounted right at the end. I'm just looking out to see, I'm not an expert on sailing boats, but I quite like the look of that one. Well, a helpful little information board here. So there's Hurst Castle, Fort Albert, which we didn't see. Oh, it was Cliff End, not Cliff Edge, which I said earlier. And there's Fort Victoria, where we are now, and there's the wooden pier. Oh, another splendid wooden carving down by the seafront. Yeah, brilliant. Well, seeing as we're by the sea, I've got to have an ice cream. Honey and banana. Oh, that's a new one on me. Well, normally they have little spoons, don't they? Now, how am I supposed to eat that? Shall I? Oh, go on then. I hope he leaves some for me. Now, I've just realised that in fact it's special ice cream for dogs. I wasn't wearing my glasses. Oh well, at least one of us is getting to enjoy it. No wonder he's tucking into it so heartily. He says, oh, we can come here again, Dad. Well, I just made our way out of the Fort Victoria Country Park and now heading eastwards, and you can see Yarmouth in the distance. I always love the sound of waves just splashing against the seawall. A little bit chilly in there for a dog dip, I think, today, fella. He says, yeah, don't even think about it, Dad. Now this is Yar Bridge. There was a toll bridge, a sort of drawbridge built in the 1860s, stretching over the mouth of the river There was a ferry before then. But in 1926, a swing bridge replaced the drawbridge, and that was wide enough for traffic in one direction only at a time. Indeed, it was controlled by the island's first ever set of traffic lights in 1935. The new, larger swing bridge, wide enough for vehicles to pass both ways at the same time, was built in 1987. Some youngsters have been crabbing here. Don't know if you can see them. Well, brings back memories when I was a youngster. What do you reckon, Fiver? They'll nip you. Ooh, big one there. And just here on the right, the Yarmouth Sailing Club, established in 1969 when they used the old bridge toll house building by the bridge as its clubhouse. I think that was then demolished to make way for the new swing bridge, and this new clubhouse was built on the other side of the road in 1986. The much older Royal Solent Yachting Club in the town was formed in 1878 with its initial headquarters in the George Hotel, but the current clubhouse is near the pier. Well, just back into the harbour at Yarmouth. Now this creature down here is a gribble, or a model of one. A gribble in real life is a tiny little creature that eats wood, and they had trouble apparently with gribbles eating the wooden pier. There is an information board. I'll put a photograph and you can freeze the screen and find a bit more about it. But there you go, that's a gribble. Well, here I am, folks, back at Yarmouth, and I've found a place that does ice cream, and it's human ice cream because there's a spoon with it. You want some? You can't be serious. Shall I? Oh, just a little bit then. Well, you know, I nearly thought I'd got to the end of a walk without bumping into a viewer, but not quite. Just got on the ferry and met Harry and Vanessa. Lovely to meet you both. And they're now the proud owners of a limited edition Dave's Countryside Walks badge and a beer mat. Well, folks, we've made it back to Yarmouth, and we're back on the Yarmouth Ferry heading back to Lymington. We've had a super walk today. If you enjoyed it, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. You've been a good boy today. Time for a sausage. And he's had a very enjoyable large ice cream. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. Good boy. Well, another little update on the route. We've made our way off the Golden Hill Country Park, and we're still going northwards looking for begins with M, certainly.